Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are going to look at factorizing expressions. So this is the first part of 2 videos I'll be doing. So in the next video we'll do a few more complex ones, but I would suggest that you pause the video and attempt these problems before looking at the next bit. Let's go. Alright, so this is a little warm-up. So on factorizing expressions, so let's just put that down. Now, what we've got is some missing terms. So 3a times something times c gives me 6abc. What do you think that could be? Well, first I'm looking at my coefficients. So I'm thinking, well, 3 times what number would give me 6? Or in other words, 6 divided by 3. So there's 2 ways to look at it. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So we know that 2 must go in there, and that works out. Now, how can we get ABC if we've only got AC? Well, we've got to get a B in there. So this is just a little warm-up for factorizing. All right. 4x times what number gives me 12xy squared? First, I'm looking at my coefficients, okay? 4 times what gives me 12? In other words, 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. So then I look at it, 4x times 3, well, we've only got 12x so far. How do we get that y squared in there? Well, we need to get a y squared term. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully it comes across. Now let's check about this. Q times what gives me 3q squared? Well, there's an invisible 1 here. So I look at my coefficients first. 1 times what number would give me 3? Or in other words, 3 divided by 1 is 3. Okay, now it's q times 3. Well, that's 3q. How can I get this to q squared? Well, I need to multiply q by itself. I like that. So q times 3q does indeed give me 3q squared. Nice. Negative 4y times what number gives me negative 12y squared? Again, look at the coefficients. What number do I need to multiply negative 4 by to get to negative 12? Well, let's just ignore the negatives in it for now. 4 times what gives me 12? Well, 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then I think, okay, well, does it work out? Does negative 4 times positive 3 equal negative 12? Yes, so we can keep that as a positive. Now, how do we get to y squared? So we've got negative 4y times 3. It's currently at negative 12y. So we need to get a y squared term in there. Just put in another y, because y times y gives y squared. That's a little factorizing warm-up. Okay, we're finding these missing factors. But first of all, I probably should have started here. Factorizing is the opposite of expanding. So what it means to factorize is to pull a factor out the front. So if we look at this, we've got the expanded form, which has no brackets. Looking here, the factorized form. So can you see this is the factorized form of that? We have pulled a common factor out the front. So the highest common factor of 6a and 21 is 3. And we've pulled that out the front and we've got that. I'm going to show you how to do this soon, so don't stress too much. And we can always get back to expanded form from factorized form. So if we look at this and expand these brackets, we've got 3 times 2a plus 3 times 7 gives me 6a plus 21, which is what we started with. So factorized form has brackets, expanded form, you've used the crab claw to get rid of the brackets. Let's do the next one. So you might want to take a photo or copy down this slide here. It's how to factorize expression. So yeah, we're going to use this process. I won't go through it. It's easiest just to do it with an example. Factorize expressions with 2 terms. All right, 3y plus 15. Let's ignore this guy over here. Now, factorizing scares people. It scares me. It's okay. First step, we need to select the highest common factor. So I'm just going to write that. Why not? Find HCF of these two terms. I look at my coefficients first, and I think, well, what is the highest common factor of 3 and 15? And then I realize that 15 is actually divisible by 3. So a common factor that we can put out the front of the brackets is 3. And then I check my variables, and there's no common factor variables, so it's all good. So I pull that out the front, and then I think to myself, I need to come up with these numbers. Okay, so I'm asking myself, for this first number, 3 times what will give me 3y? 3 times y will indeed give me 3y. You can always check by expanding it again, which I'm doing. So that's the check step. Then I look over here and I ask myself, 3 times what number gives me the second term, 15? 3 times 5 gives me 15. And if we were to expand that, do our little check, 3 times 5, 15. And we end up with what we started with. So you can actually check your work. You don't have to wait for your teacher to mark your work. You can have confidence in your answers. Let's try out this one. Just takes practice, okay? So 6a, take 3. First step, work out what's the common factor of your coefficients. And I know that there's a negative in here and that confuses people. Just ignore it for now. Let's focus on dragging a positive out the front. So the highest common factor of 6 and 3. Well, I realize that 3 goes into 6, right? And 3 also goes into 3. So 3 is the highest common factor again. So we'll pull that out the front, put down a pair of brackets, and set up our little solution. Now I'm asking myself, 3 times what number gives me this first term, 6a? 3 times what gives me 6? 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then I need to get a in there somehow. And I can check that. Let's do our little check. We get the first term, 3 times 2a, 6a. 3 times 2 is 6, a times 1 is a. Okay, looks good. Now we've got to work out what do I multiply 3 by to get negative 3? 3, well, let's just focus on getting the 3. 3 times 1 is 3, but how do I make it negative? Well, I need a different sign here. And now we can expand. So because positive times a negative gives a negative. So that's why I work that out. Different sign, subtract. All right, let's expand that. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. And we end up with what we started with. So we're all good. But these are our answers. The factorized form has brackets. Okay. Check out this. Let's speed up the pace a little bit. All right. So we're going to factorize this. What's the highest common factor between these terms? Look at the coefficients. It might take a little bit of a while to get to know what the highest common factor is. But I'm looking at this and I can see that 9 goes into each of them, right? 9 goes into 18. 9 also goes into 45. So you really want to know your times tables in order to factorize. And yeah, so get on top of that. Let's do this. So 9 at the front. There's no common factors between the variables. So we've found our highest common factor. I'm asking myself now, 9 times what will give me this first term? Well, 9 times 2 gives me 18. And then we need a b in there. And then we can check. 9 times 2 is 18b. All good. Check. 9 times what number? 9 times what number gives me 45? We'll worry about the negative later. 9 times 5 gives me 45. 9 times what number gives me negative 45? Well, positive times a negative. So we change that sign, all right? And you can check. 9 times -5 is indeed -45. We're all good. Let's check this one out. 7m plus 21mn, looking slightly different. I'll just throw that away. Look at your coefficients. What's the highest common factor? We're going to pull that out the front. I notice that 7 goes into 21. 7 also goes into 7. Let's get that out the front. Now we check our variables for common factors. Don't forget to check the variables. So m is common to both terms, right? So I can pull an m out the front. And that's the only other common factor. Now let's put our things in. So I'm asking myself, 7m times what will give me the first term? 7m times 1 will give me the first term. You can check it, but we're not even going to bother anymore with checking. So we get that done. 7m times what gives me 21mn. We'll just check the coefficients first. 7 times what gives me 21 times 3. And then 7m times what gives me 21mn. Need to get an n in there somewhere. All right, we're looking good. Pretty sure we're nearly at the last slide of questions. And then we got our summary. A squared plus 3a. Let's check it out. Factorizing expressions with two terms. All right, so now here I see there's an invisible one. And I check that. Okay, well, we can't pull any coefficients out the front. If we wanted to, we could write 1 outside the brackets. That's okay. Now let's check our variables. What's the common factor of the variables? Now the common factor of the variables is going to be the variable with the lowest power. Okay. And that's A. I'm going to get rid of that 1 there because we don't need to write it with algebra. Okay. That might seem a little bit weird now, but we can always just test it by multiplying it out. So then I look at this. A times what number will give me the first term? A times what will give me a squared? A times A. A times what number will give me 3a? Will just be 3. And then try it out. A times A gives me a squared plus A times 3. 3a. If you want, you can write that little step in between. A times A times 3. Whoops. And then you need, to multiply and simplify that way. All right, let's go. 2x squared plus 10x. Factorizing means putting into a pair of brackets. Last question, we can do this. So we look at the coefficients, right? And we can see what's the common factor between 2 and 10, the highest common factor. Well, they're both even, so I know automatically that 2 comes out the front, which is nice. Then I look at my variables. Well, what's the highest common factor here? So a bit strangely, the one with the highest common factor, the highest common factor is the one with the lowest power. All right. So x is going to be pulled out the front, just like a was pulled out the front here. So we've got 2x. Now 2x times what will give me 2x squared? Well, 2x times x. You can test that out. 2x. Oh, we won't even write that. Oh, 2x times x does indeed give me 2x squared. And then we look here. 2x times what number gives me 10x? 2x times 2 times 5 gives me 10. And we don't want any x squared terms in here, so that's all we do. So plus 2x times 5 will indeed give me 10x, which is what we started with. So that's your checking step. But just some key takeaways. Factorizing is the opposite of expanding. So this is expanded form, has no brackets. Factorized form has brackets, and you're pulling that highest common factor out the front. And you need to check both your coefficients and your variables for each term. And I hope that makes sense. I'm going to leave it on this slide if you want to write down a little process to use to answer factorizing questions. But I'll see you in the next video, which is part 2 of factorizing. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.